Welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg. I am Reverend Meg Biddle, and I serve at the American Baptist Home Mission Societies as the national coordinator for Ministry Life and the American Baptist Profile System. I'm joined today by Reverend Kristi Jones. Kristi, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, what this is about is Ministry Mondays is where I am inviting clergy to come and talk about what ministry life is really like serving now. Um, so, Kristi, first of all, why don't you tell people a little bit about you and where you serve?
All right. Well, I am Kristi Jones. I have served here at Memorial Baptist Church in Columbus, Indiana for 3 years. Memorial is my first position as a pastor in the church, and I was ordained here at Memorial last year in the midst of COVID, and went through the whole ordination process in the midst of COVID. I have had a daughter in the midst of COVID. I got married just prior, like 2 months prior to taking this position, and we moved from North Carolina back to Indiana. Indiana is my home. I grew up about 45 minutes from Columbus in Versailles, Indiana. Graduated from Indiana Wesleyan University. So I spent my first 21 years basically here in Indiana, but then spent some time in Florida, North Carolina, did seminary, started at Duke University, but then through some events ended up at Campbell University Divinity School. And I say that was one of the smartest moves I ever made. It was a seminary and a place that I just truly loved and really grew in my walk with God. And so it set me up very well for ministry. And yeah, that's kind of the story of how I got here to Columbus for sure.
And full disclosure, I'm also from the great state of Indiana, and I've actually known Kristi and her family for a long time through church camp, and was actually roommates with with her cousin when we served on staff at Southeastern Baptist Youth Camp. Um, I, so I'm so grateful to be able to do this and to hear more about your ministry. As you were talking, everything was in the midst of COVID. In the midst of COVID, you had 1 year, right? Prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, so I started in 2019 in January. So I basically had a full year without the pandemic where it started, December maybe stuff was starting, but it wasn't really here in the United States that we were aware of. So, but the crazy thing about that was it was my first year. It was me getting like my feet in the water and figuring things out. I'm a solo pastor, so I do everything from Sunday mornings and senior adult ministry, a lot of that too. I am over the kids ministry and the youth ministry. My husband and I run that. So we do anything and everything. But yeah, that first year was crazy because I think I did 3 funerals within the first 2 months that I was there. Um, which was a very scary thing, but also a very beautiful thing. And now it's probably one of my favorite things that I get to do with my people. It's definitely sad, but it's just an honor and a privilege to walk through that part of life with people who just lost a loved ones. And it's just a great way to kind of figure out how to honor people's lives and just walk through that season with them. So it was
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that about how you connected and how you approach funerals. I feel the same way about funerals. I'd actually and there's much joy in a wedding, but I would prefer to do the funeral, really, honestly. You have far better opportunity to connect with people and enter in with them, into that time of grief. So, um, as you were in this first year of your ministry and running from this to this to this to just trying to figure out how all this worked, and then what, March, April 2020
Mhm.
happens. Uh, were you guys already online, or what did that look like for you at the beginning of the pandemic?
So I had been pushing for us to get online. It just felt like something we needed an online presence. But we're also a smaller church. Most of my congregation are older, retired folks. They're really smart. Columbus is blessed with
Mhm.
many engineers. So if you need anything figured out, somebody can probably figure it out, which is a blessing. But um, there was just that hesitancy with the like getting online. So we weren't online, but um, yeah, when we realized we needed to get online and we needed to do it, I think we made the decision on a Thursday and we were fully online by Sunday. And it was me right here in my kitchen with my laptop and we got on Zoom. And I think all I did that day was everything like prayer requests. I made a couple of announcements and then, some prayers, and then I went into the sermon. It was probably the shortest service I've ever done.
Wow. Um, so now that we are at least semi emerging from this pandemic and trying to shift into the endemic mode, um, are you continuing with worship services online? Are you planning to do both and?
Yeah, so we actually just came off of a month where we went back online. The as it was in Columbus, it was everywhere. The numbers had spiked up here at the beginning of the year, and so February, we just noticed we were getting hit hard, and so we just took a month off and went back online. But now we're back in person, and the plan is to keep our online presence. We actually have at least two people who join us regularly online who are out of state. We also have at least two that I know of for sure who are local, but they just don't feel they are in very difficult health situations, and if they were to get COVID, it could be very much life threatening for them. So they're staying online. They do everything that we offer that's online. But we have a one of our guys moved to Florida in the midst of all of this, and he's been joining us online every now and then, more frequently than I imagined. Um, and then we also have people who are like firefighters and people like that who sometimes work on Sundays. And so they'll join while they're working when they can. And so the online presence we found to be really important for continuing community just in the midst of life, right? It's not just COVID, it's work, it's everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's great that you're able to maintain, you know, that sense of community in the midst of all this. So, which brings me to like, um, you got your feet wet the first year, trial by fire, and then over the next 2 years, how did that pastoral care? How did that change? How does has that evolved? What does it look like now?
Yeah, so this is a question I always struggle with because uh, to I love being face to face with people. I cannot stand talking on the phone. It is just not my favorite thing, and that was the solution, right? Like right off the bat, it was just make phone calls, make sure people are okay, check on your those that are uh, they're confined to home or their living situation, And also, like, I really struggled with knowing what to talk about, especially with my people who were in their nursing homes. They weren't able really to see family. They weren't able to get out. Those things, my heart just broke for them. So I struggled. Thankfully, Memorial has a really great member care team, is what we call it. And they send cards every month to our shut ins. They send cards for birthdays and holidays. And they're really great. I depend on them a lot for a lot of ministry, but um, I also reach out too. So I've really learned to embrace phone calls. Um, when needed, we were meeting in person. Now I'm back. I just did a at home visit not that long ago with someone who recently started attending church, and have been back into some of our assisted living places, but there's still restrictions. So those are hard, especially with having a baby with me full time, essentially. So I've just really tried to embrace the phone call and tried to like lean on my people too, because some of them are just a lot better at sending cards than I am. They're a lot better remembering what people are going through. I recognize, hey, I've only been here for 3 years, and 2 of those years, I've not really got to know people as much as I would like. And so there's some people that just I don't have that connection with, but they do. And so I've leaned on them a lot too, but also being there, listening and checking in on them. I think I'd also just add to that. We do a Zoom, I call it a Wednesday pick me up every Wednesday. And it's at noon so that people who are on their lunch hour can join us as well, which we have one person who takes advantage of that. The rest of them join me, and we share prayer concerns and praises. We do a short devotional, and then we just chat. And honestly, that has been a huge win for us. That kind of developed in COVID and is still running. It's just a good, like, these people, they say they look forward to it every week. And I know every time I get off the call, it's one of those that I'm really thankful that I was on. Sometimes it can feel like things drain us. And for me, like that Wednesday pick me up really does. As much as it's good for them, it picks me up too, just to see their faces.
Well, I applaud you for your courage, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable to say, hey, I am not the greatest at this, but I have these wonderful people in my church who support me in my ministry. So good for you for doing that.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like that Wednesday thing brings you a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. It's nice. It's created a sense of community with a few people that maybe I didn't have prior to this as well. And it's enhanced the community and like just knowing others better too. So
yeah, I think that's a lovely idea. So you mentioned that you have your daughter with you full time. So how does that mom pastor thing, how does that work?
I have no clue. I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I have her with me full time. My church is great. I had several of them say, hey, if you have something come up and you can't take her with you, just give me a call or send me a text. And so I have some really great folks around me who are willing to help out. We don't have a whole lot of family right here around us that aren't working or would be available during those times. So I really do lean on my church people during that time. But I have learned to embrace everything. It is about not having control. And so if I'm in a meeting and Riley's crying or she's making a mess of things because she's walking and she's getting into stuff now, I just go with it. And I find they just love to see her too. So I found that it's just great to have her with me. So.
I think yeah, when you bring a baby in, you've got a lot of um aunties and uncles and surrogate grandpas and grandmas and things like that. So I think when you have little kids involved, the noise just brings so much joy and life to a congregation
Yeah.
that she'll be able to get get away with whatever she wants. So I love that. Um, so as you've gotten started in your ministry, have you found has there anything through this process that you found particularly helpful resource wise?
Yeah, here our region, Indiana, Kentucky, they offer. It was like almost once a week, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic. It's changed to 2 times a month, I think now. But they were offering Zoom calls for pastors in the region just to get together. At first, it started just as us talking, like, this is what's going on, this is what's weighing me down, this is what I'm finding joy in. And then it developed into finding resources. And so unfortunately I've not been able to get on a lot this year, but I'm trying to adjust my schedule so I can. But that's been a huge resource to get to. What we found was that you might know one other pastor close to you, but it's hard to know like all the pastors in our network. And so this opened the door to get to knowing them. Um, I also have just gotten plugged in with the Center for Congregations. I found that we needed some help being able to buy some of the technology that we needed in order to go online, and they had a grant here for churches in Indiana, and so we took advantage of that, and we were able to get like a new camera and things like that. And I found Center for Congregations, which is available to churches all over the world, honestly, in any denomination. They also have free webinars that you can get on, and there's been ones about finances, and there have been ones about post-pandemic life and ministry. There have been ones that are geared just towards worship and just towards youth or kids ministry. And they have been super helpful, and they're full of resources to just that they'll send. Like, you don't have to give any money, and they'll just send them. So that's been a blessing to us. We were using them some before the pandemic, and you were having to go places and pay money, and now they're mostly online. So that's been a great blessing. And then we also are connected with the Ecumenical Assembly of Bartholomew County Churches here in Columbus. Are you familiar with them?
I A little bit from living in Bartholomew County, but
Yeah. So it's a group of, I think, 26 churches in our county that everything from United Methodist, Lutheran, Catholic, Presbyterian, Baptist, all flavors. And we have come together, we've created this ecumenical, and there's a mentor program there and financial assistance as well for people who are struggling. And the executive director actually attends Memorial, and he started the position, like we started our jobs the same day. So
okay.
yeah, so we've kind of learned together, and it's been really fun. But I also have a heart for homeless ministry, also just for people who are down on their luck and just need some assistance. And I think we've done a poor job over the years of, sometimes just giving peanut butter and jelly, which is good in and of itself, but what else can we do? What's going to help not just feed them, but get them on the path to where they can make sure they have food, or they have resources for food for every meal. And, so I have been plugged in a lot with the Love Chapel or the Ecumenical Assembly. And I have been in the food pantry doing some chapel work, doing some also like, I actually packed some bags too. And then now I'm in the financial office, and my job really is just to be a pastor and talk to these people as they share their struggles and what they need some help with, and kind of decide, what can we do to help them. So, and then I'm able to get them connected with like the mentor program,
Okay.
things like that. So it's a great resource. I wish every county in this country could figure out something like that.
Yeah. I remember Love Chapel, and I've experienced Love Chapel. So, but to know that it goes that broad is amazing. So it sounds like you had a great collaboration with your ecumenical
Mhm.
group. Are there other collaborations that you found helpful, or is really that your main focus has been with the ecumenical association?
So that's probably been my main focus, just because it was an easy in for me,
Oh yeah.
being that the executive director is part of our church. But I have been opening the door to any possibility I have. And so through the ecumenical assembly, I chair the worship committee, which we put on a Good Friday service for the whole community every year. And so I've been able to connect with pastors then from all these different churches and get to know them and get to collaborate and come up with ideas for our churches as well. I also have been involved with a couple other organizations here locally, one of them being Clarity, which is a pregnancy resource center. They actually use our church several times a month for training and staff meetings. But I am hoping to open the door to like how we can collaborate with them in the future as well.
Okay.
Um, so I would say that that's the one thing that maybe I've missed out on some, being that, for basically 2 of the 3 years I've been here, we haven't been able to get together, and
But
uh,
you've also been pretty busy, it
yeah,
sounds like.
yeah.
So if somebody in the midst of this pandemic thing, um, if somebody asked you a question, what's one question like you wish that somebody would have asked you? That might be a hard question. Like, what do you wish somebody would have or would ask now about ministry? Um,
Yeah, I
a
have lots of things popping in my head. Um, I think how would I phrase this? Something along the lines of like, what did it or what does it take for you to provide services for us or for our community? Um, Especially being a solo pastor, like I mean, I had to update myself. I had to go out and buy a new cell phone
Mm,
like right at the beginning of the pandemic, because my phone was old and there was no way I was going to be able to record videos and things like
mm,
that. So I did that, but like, I mean, I even have my laptop sitting on top of a couple books right now. Um, but
right.
people like, uh, yeah, I just wish people asked instead of maybe fussed about what the sound quality was or fussed about something else. They might would have asked, how do you even do that?
Right. Yeah. For them to understand the process of one, what it takes to do to live out your call,
Yeah.
and and two, what all of that looks like to get to each Sunday. 'Cause, I remember when you're serving as a pastor, you you every every Sunday.
Yeah.
You know the dates, and you live by the Sunday. And I think sometimes people forget how much, or don't realize how much is done from one Sunday to the next.
Yeah.
So no, I know that kind of puts you on the spot, but I think that's a great answer.
Yeah. And
Um, yeah,
I would just add, my husband is so supportive and such a big part of my call and my ministry, and he's very big behind sound and stuff like that. And like, and being that he was right here with me on Sundays and seeing, what we had rigged up to make Zoom happen or whatever, or what I even rig up now just to record something. Yeah, it's one of those, like, I don't know, he's great. Props to our spouses and partners and everyone who are there with us for just along the way. But it is, uh, I don't know. It's a blessing to have him and just to know that somebody else at least understands.
And definitely nothing they could have ever prepared you for in seminary. So I applaud you for still hanging in there, for doing the good work. So as we kind of wrap this up, what is one thing that gives you hope about the future of the church, whether it's your church or the church in general?
Yeah.
Or we could even say, that gives you dreams. What's one thing that you dream of, that if God said, Kristi, you want to do this thing? Let's do it. What's one thing, that God says you cannot fail? What might something like that look like?
The broad answer would be bringing the kingdom of God here on earth as it is in heaven, like whatever that looks like.
Sure.
I don't know. We were just talking in a ministry council meeting yesterday, and I wanted them to start thinking, what are things we can do to be in our community, in our neighborhood specifically. Is it like a shelter house? Is it a place where people can come and have shelter? We have a lot of homeless folks who come and sleep right at our doors because there's a overhanging there.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that's your answer, is just is your hope is that you continue to stay connected in your community, and that your congregation feels safe to dream along with you, and ask big questions like, what could you do? What would you do if you knew that it wouldn't fail? So I know I asked questions that we could talk for hours, and really would like to think about some of these, and just ponder ideas. But hopefully it gets us all in conversation with one another, and we can all find ways to support one another in our ministries, whatever that looks like. So I think you're doing great work. I appreciate you and all that hard work that you have done over the last 3 years. If there's a way that we at ABHMS can support you through the different grants and things like that we have, by all means, let us know.
All right.
And again, thank you so much for being my second guest on Ministry Monday. You can catch us every Monday at 11 a.m. and that will be on the Ministry Life site, on Facebook under the ABHMS webpage, and on ABHMS YouTube page. So thank you, Kristi, so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.